Memory cards, the gateway between getting the image in your camera and getting it to your computer where you're going to finish it and edit it. Different kinds of memory cards, different sizes, different speeds. What do they all mean? I don't know. Let's try to figure it out. So like I said before, every one of your images passes through a memory card. That's still the way the technology is now. I'm sure at some point in the future there's going to be wireless technology that's better than this, but this is still the way to go. This is still the fastest, easiest way to do it right now. And you want to make sure that you have the right card. So how do you figure that out? Well, first of all, different cameras take different types of cards. So basically the most popular types of memory cards for photography are compact flash cards, which are these larger square cards. And then there's the SD cards, which stands for secure digital. Compact flash is the larger square one. Secure digital SD cards are these smaller ones. And the compact flash cards tend to be faster. We'll talk about speed later on. But those are basically the two main kinds. Recently, there's been an XQD card that's fairly new, which is different format than these. These are really kind of old technology. They've updated them. They've made them faster over the years, but these are 20-plus year old technology. So these new XQD cards are with some of the newer cameras. I know Sony's using them. I think Nikon is on the Z7. But really, for all intents and purposes, the type of card really isn't as important as the capacity, the speed, and things like that. But the type of card is going to be dictated by the type of camera you have and what kind of card it takes. Now, some cards have two memory card slots. The 5D4, the Canon 5D4, and the 5D3 before it had a compact flash card slot and a SD card slot. So it had both of them. So I had to have cards. That's really why I have so many of both. I have cards. And it looks like a lot of compact flash cards here. I mean, some of these I grabbed a whole bunch of them. 1 gigabyte cards. I have like a giant pile of these 1 gigabyte cards from back in the day. So that used to be a fairly high capacity card, and now it won't even hold really anything. It's kind of useless. So those are the different types of memory cards: compact flash, SD card, and the new XQD. But what we're really going to be talking about, the more important stuff, is the capacity and the speed, and also the brand. You want to make sure that you have, like I said, everything's going through these cards. So you want to make sure that you have a good brand. I've been using Lexar forever. It really is. It's a great card. I had a problem with one card once, which I have here somewhere. I had a problem with this one. I did a whole video about it last year. I lost a whole trip's worth of stuff. It's never been recovered. It's kind of here in like a cryogenic state right now. So that sometime in the future, in the distant future, there'll be technology that can actually recover these images. But it hasn't happened yet. But I had a problem once with a Lexar card. Other than that, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of images gone through these cards without any problem. So Lexar, SanDisk, those are really the big players in the cards. Those are really the most popular, and they're probably the best. So if you want to get a card, you want to get one that's reliable. They have recovery software. If you ever have a problem, you can actually recover some images that you may have gotten lost on there. But Lexar and SanDisk are really the big players in the game. So capacity depends on really, how much shooting that you're going to do and how big your files are. So you want to figure out how much memory you need based on, how the frequency is going to be between times that you're loading the pictures from the memory card to your computer. So if you're going to be doing it, every half day or so, and, you only take a couple hundred images in a half day, then you don't need a card that's that big. If you're going to be shooting, all day long, taking a couple thousand images and downloading at night when you get back to the hotel or home, or if it's going to be a few days before you can, which I don't recommend doing, I'll tell you why, you want to make sure you have a high capacity card. And they make cards up to like a terabyte now, which is kind of crazy. The biggest card I have a 256 gigabyte card, which is more than enough. I've spent a week shooting and haven't even come close to filling it up. I download every night, but I leave the images on the card just to have, I guess it's not a backup, I guess it's a front up. It's the original image is on here. I don't delete them until I know I have them backed up on my laptop and then a external hard drive later on. Then I'll finally delete them from here. So you want to make sure you have enough capacity, and you can check. If you have a 20 megapixel camera, it's going to be about 20 megabytes. So you can kind of do the math and figure out if you're going to be shooting 1,000 images, how many gigabytes you need. before you max out on that card. And then you want to make sure that you have an extra card, maybe about half that capacity. You want to keep that in your bag just in case something happens to that card while you're out shooting. Another option that you can do is, rather than having one high capacity card, have several smaller capacity cards. So instead of having a 128 gigabyte card, have two 64 gigabyte cards. And that can actually even be a cheaper option also. If you want to price it out and you say, okay, I need 128 to get me through the day, 128 might actually be more expensive than getting two 64 gigabyte cards. So you might want to look at different options, go online and kind of price them out accordingly. But you definitely want to make sure that you have enough capacity between either, if it's one card or two or three or four cards, to get you through the day. That's what you're going to need. So the most confusing and probably most misunderstood feature of these memory cards is the speed. The speed basically refers to how quickly images can be written onto the card. And now generally this is expressed as megabytes per second, or MBS. So a fast card is one that's going to give you, 100 megabytes or 200 megabytes per second. That's a fairly fast card. The other part of it, though, that is kind of not totally understood because, the information really isn't readily available, is you can only write so quickly to these cards based on how quickly the camera will write to them. So cameras basically have a speed at which they write from the camera to the card. So if you have a super high speed card, like 500 megabytes per second, it's not necessarily going to mean that your images are being written that quickly to that card, because that's the read speed. The read speed is basically how quickly they're being read by the memory card. The write speed, how quickly the camera is writing them from the camera to the memory card, is also limited. So you could have the fastest card in the world, doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be writing images that much quicker to that card. Because the camera basically has an internal memory. So when images are taken, they're actually saved to the internal camera memory, and then from there, they're written from there to the memory card. And that's basically the buffer. You've heard of the buffer. That's basically a very small internal memory that each camera has. And as you're taking images, they go into that little memory and then they get written to the card. And that internal memory can fill up fairly quickly. Especially if you're shooting 20, 30 megapixel shots, if you're shooting, at a high frame rate, 5, 10, 15 frames per second, that buffer can fill up really quickly. And that's really a limitation of the hardware of the camera. So you want to make sure that you definitely have a memory card that is capable of reading information at a fast rate, but it doesn't necessarily have to be faster than the camera can do. Now, if you're shooting one image at a time, well, it really doesn't matter. But if you're shooting bursts of, 20 frames per second, it's going to fill up really quickly. Even if you're shooting at 5 frames per second and you have a 20 megapixel camera, which, those files are going to be about 20 megabytes. At 5 frames per second, that's basically 100 megabytes per second right there. That's how quickly you need to be able to get it onto the card. Now, a good card will actually be able to read at 100 megabytes per second. And the thing that's a little bit hard to understand or misleading maybe about these is they're not always expressed as megabytes per second when you look at the specs of each card. So I have some here. This one is actually, the SanDisk is 160 megabytes per second. This 128 gigabyte Lexar card is 1066X. Doesn't say anything about megabytes per second. It says 1066X, which who knows what that means. Well, there is actually a formula that you can use. If you take this number, this 1066X, and divide it by 6.67, it'll give you the speed, the megabytes per second. That comes out to about 150 or 160 megabytes per second. Maybe I'll put a little formula right here. You can see that. So that's basically how you translate that. So take the number, take that X number that's sitting on the front here. This one is 400X, which is a much slower speed. It's an older card, it's a very old card. But 1066X is probably about 150 megabytes per second. I can't really do the math that quickly, but I'm guessing, or 160. And do that math, and you'll be able to tell from there what the read speed is on this memory card. Now, you really can't write any faster than, 200 is probably a great speed if the camera's writing to the memory card at 200. There's a really cool website called cameramemoryspeed.com. You can check that out, cameramemoryspeed.com, and they basically have every camera. There wasn't a camera that I was looking for that I couldn't find. So it's almost every camera, and like almost every configuration of memory card, between compact flash and SD cards and everything, and it's all basically, they did the tests, so it's all basically laid out, and they from there derive what are the best memory cards for each of those cameras. So like the Canon 5D4 that I was using before maxed out at about 112 megabytes per second, even to the fastest card that it was writing to. That was kind of as fast as it could write. The Canon R that I'm using now is about 180 megabytes per second. So I'm getting, actually, and I see it when I use the camera, where I was before, I was hitting that buffer, I was hitting that internal memory at about maybe 14, 15 frames if I was, firing really quickly. Now I actually haven't, on my Canon R, I haven't actually maxed out. I've never hit the buffer limit on that, so I don't even know what it is. But I know that it's writing from the camera to the card a lot faster. And I'm just using the same memory card in the Canon R that I was using in my 5D Mark IV. So a memory card that has a read speed of 160 megabytes per second should be more than enough to actually read the images that you're trying to write to them from the camera. They have cards that are 500, 600 megabytes per second, which are really more for video. If you're shooting 4K and beyond now, video, you may need a higher speed card like that. But for still shooting, even if it's really high frame rate stuff, it's overkill. Anything over 160, 170 megabytes per second is more than enough. So when you're looking for a memory card, when you're shopping, remember capacity, you want to make sure that you have enough, and speed. You want to make sure that you have enough speed to actually read the images that you're writing to it, but you don't need more speed than that. You're just basically wasting money at that point. So basically get a card that fits into that box, fits into the capacity that you need to get through a day of shooting or whatever time period it is of shooting, and is fast enough to read the images faster than the camera is writing to them. And then you need a memory card reader, which I have. I've had this one, Lexar USB 3.0. I've had it it's one of the oldest things I have. I've had it for several years now. And, the card basically goes in here. USB goes into the computer, and I don't care how long it takes. I'm not really in a rush to get my images from here into the computer. So this is probably a slower way to do it. There are probably faster readers. Some cards have a write speed that are faster. To me, it really doesn't matter. I don't care if it takes 10 minutes or 8 minutes. It really doesn't matter how quickly they get in there. So, but definitely get a memory card reader. This way, it's better than hooking your camera up to the computer with the actual wires. Do it this way. This way, you can take it out. It's better this way. So just get a memory card reader for that. So that's it. I hope that was helpful. It's something that I think about every couple of years. I look at, especially if I switch camera systems like I did with the Canon R, I look at the memory cards that I have and I try to figure out if I'm using the best ones, if I have the best ones for what I'm trying to do. So I have to kind of brush up and refresh every year or so to make sure that my cards aren't limiting what I'm trying to do. So like I said, I hope you found that a little bit helpful. Thanks for watching. If you have any comments or questions or anything, if I got something wrong, because there's a lot of technical info here, whatever I got wrong, put it in the comments below. Love to hear from you. Love to be corrected. Any questions you have, also put them down below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.